So here's the best thing about the Acolyte episode 8.
It's done.
The Acolyte season 1, which, let's be honest, is probably going to be the only season of this fucking show, has no good episodes, and it's debatable as to which episode is the worst of the 8, but I've got to say, episode 8, even though it's not as laughably cringe as some of the previous episodes, like episode 3, for instance, this finale is easily the most infuriating of the bunch. A recurring theme throughout this entire show has been Leslie Headland, the showrunner and Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant. Her just fixation on casting the Jedi as the bad guys. What makes episode 8 the most infuriating episode of this goddamn show is that Leslie Headland's hatred of the Jedi is really apparent in this one. I mean, they ladle it on really thick, and there are a couple scenes that really show this. For example, earlier on in the episode, that puke green Jedi lady who's played by Leslie Headland's wife, who can't act her way out of a sopping wet paper bag, she gets visited by this Republic senator who wants to conduct this oversight review of the Jedi because he believes the Jedi are this system of unchecked power who merely pretend to control their emotions and just project this image of goodness rather than actually being good. These are the barely disguised thoughts of the people who made this show. And the people who made this show are these moral relativists who have this view of, well, the Jedi aren't really good, and how dare they act like they are. Then later on in the episode, Sol and Smilo Ren are having this lightsaber fight, which ends with Sol besting Smilo Ren, not killing him though, because then May intervenes and ambushes Sol, which results in Sol letting go of his lightsaber because they make Sol inept just when the plot calls for it. And then after that, Sol admits to May with Osha in earshot that he killed their mother. So Osha hears this and it pisses her off, and this is what pushes her toward the dark side, and she starts force choking Master Sol. How she knows how to do this without any training, I don't know. I mean, I know earlier on in the show, Smilo Ren said that the dark side does not require training, but that's a load of bullshit. Anyways, Sol allows May to force choke him without putting up any sort of a fight. He's more powerful than she is. He could get out of this if he wanted to, but he doesn't do anything. I mean, I know some apologist out there will probably argue that Sol is so distraught that he can't bring himself to do anything. And yeah, Li Zhongzhe does play this scene as if Sol is distraught, but Sol has no reason to be this distraught. I mean, Sol's a good person, so I can understand why he would feel bad about stabbing Mother Anastasia, but he shouldn't be a gibbering mess in this situation. I mean, when he tells Osha that he killed her mother, at no point does he bring up the caveat that it was in self-defense, which it absolutely was. I mean, Mother Anastasia turned into that black mist and looked very, very threatening, and then Master Sol just put his lightsaber into the mist just as a desperate self-defense measure. And by the way, when Sol stabbed the fart cloud, Mother Anastasia re-solidified into her corporal form, so she let herself get stabbed. It's her fault that she's dead, but I digress. The point is, this show is really trying to cram down our throats this idea that Master Sol did something terribly wrong and that it's just further evidence that the Jedi are bad. No, he didn't. And no, they aren't. Another way that you can tell that this show is created by moral relativists who hate the Jedi and hate the idea of good being good and evil being evil is the way this episode treats Osha's turn to the dark side. After Osha kills Sol, she and May run into the woods of Brendok where Smilo Ren ends up finding them, and then Osha tells Smilo Ren that she will train with him in place of May since Osha did the whole Acolyte thing of killing a Jedi without a weapon, you know, because she force choked Sol to death somehow. The scene where Osha leaves May to go train with Smilo Ren is one of those tearful goodbyes that girls in high school give each other on graduation day because everyone's going off to college and going their separate ways. And visually, this moment is extremely bucolic and very, very light with all the scenery and the way it's lit. It's almost treating this moment as if it's a relief from the harrowing non-story that Osha has been a part of in the previous 7 episodes. And it's treating the prospect of Osha going to train with Smilo Ren as a good thing. This episode thinks it's a good thing that Osha is going to learn evil ways from an evil man. I'm sure the creators of this show would argue that no, that's not the case if you ask them about this, but no, it is the case, because this show is made by moral relativist Hollywood writers who don't see the reality of objective good and objective evil. This show's moral compass is all fucked up because the moral compass of the people who made it is fucked up. The nauseating pretension of this episode trying to subvert good and evil is only the beginning of what's wrong with it. I mean, there is so much more here to go through. I have talked a lot about Lee Jong-jae as Master Soul throughout my Acolyte reviews, and I've got to talk about him again because the greatest injustice of this show is that the best actor of this cast, and definitely the hardest working because this guy learned English to play Master Soul, he's continuously saddled with this writing that's not only terrible, but it's writing that actively hates his character. I mean, this writing makes Master Soul incompetent and stupid just so the plot can proceed the way that the showrunners want it to. For instance, early in this episode, on board Soul's ship, May manages to get out of her restraints using that little pip droid, and she shocks Soul with it. And she does all of this under Soul's nose. Soul is a Jedi Master. He should have better senses than this, and of course he does, but again, the plot needs to happen. And as I said earlier, when Osha is force choking Master Soul, he doesn't do anything to fight back. He could, he's more powerful than Osha, but he doesn't because, again, the plot. Also, that moment where May ambushes Master Soul and gets him to let go of his lightsaber, this happens just after Soul has bested Smilo Ren in a lightsaber fight. Smilo Ren, who by the way has killed many Jedi Knights. The skill level consistency in this show makes Rey's in the sequel trilogy just look perfect by comparison. I guess the best part of this episode would be the lightsaber fight between Soul and Smilo Ren, but there's one really silly moment, I'm sure you already know what it is, where it tries to go a wuxia with the wire fu. The way it looks, put it this way, it's not exactly Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. One of the plot threads in this episode involves Leslie Headland's non-actor wife, the puke green Jedi, going to Brendok with this squad of Jedi Knights to find May and Osha. And when she gets there, it is revealed that Smilo Ren was her apprentice. So I guess in that really cringy episode where Smilo Ren took his shirt off and you could see that whipping scarring on his back, I guess that's meant to suggest that she did that to him with her lightsaber whip. The episode ends with the Senate being told what happened on Brendok with the witches 16 years earlier, and Green Bitch pins all the responsibility on Master Soul, and she tells the Senate that Soul killed all the Jedi on Brendok, who were of course actually killed by Smilo Ren, but she tells them that Soul killed those Jedi to cover his own tracks. And then the senator from the beginning of the episode gets the oversight review of the Jedi that he wanted. Wow, this show really fucking hates Master Soul. The lead into Acolyte Season 2, which is probably not going to happen at this point, involves May being apprehended by the Jedi and Green Bitch questioning her about where she can find Smilo Ren, but May doesn't remember. It should be noted that when May and Osha were saying goodbye, Smilo Ren wiped May's memory, but when Green Bitch is questioning May does have some sketchy memories. Like, she remembers that her mother was killed, and she remembers about the fire. So this episode cannot even commit to what it means when a character's memory is wiped. When a character's memory is wiped, that's it. They can't remember anything. So after pinning everything on Master Soul, Green Bitch goes into this room to consult one of her superior Jedi Masters, and surprise, surprise, it's Yoda. Then the episode ends. But that is not the only bit of desperate key jangling that this episode does, because at one point there is a scene where we see this cloaked, kind of mummified looking guy inside Smilo Ren's cave lair, and I guess this is supposed to be Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
As if this perfunctory key jangling makes up for the fact that this entire show that we just watched makes Ruin Johnson's The Last Jedi look like Empire Strikes Back. Now, these member berries are obviously supposed to lead into an Acolyte Season 2, but given the subterranean Rotten Tomatoes audience score and the fact that mainstream publications have turned on this show, I think a second season is about as likely as a Beatles reunion. In a way, I'm glad that The Acolyte was as disastrous as it was, because it completely vindicates what critics of Disney's Star Wars and Kathleen Kennedy have been saying for years. Sure, there will still be shills for this shit, but the wholehearted rejection of The Acolyte by the Star Wars fandom proves that those who dislike Disney's Star Wars are the vocal majority. They are not the vocal minority. So I'll just say this for all the shills out there. There are more of us than there are of you.